this is the country I come from. If I want to go and be part of this country, if I want to go invest in this country, let me first start by owning my own house, wherein I can go with my kids at my comfort zone, relax, and now I can use my house as a springboard to be able to invest in other areas.
This is the Africa Housing Podcast. We explore real estate, entrepreneurship, innovation, and the inspiring stories that are shaping the future of Africa. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. My name is John Block. I'm the Chief Investment Officer with Jobomax Global, and I'm really excited for the conversation today.
And I am Bob Hornsby, Chief Executive Officer at Jobomax Global. Equally excited. Today we have a fun guest, Komba Kembay. He will be talking about the book that he's written and his personal journey. Komba is an author, a member of the Sierra Leone Diaspora, a manager for the government of Yukon, a founder of the Resilience Foundation, a former mortgage administrative head for Great Way Financial, former credit assistant for mortgages at TD Bank. He has lived in Sierra Leone, the US, and Canada, and he's got a really interesting perspective on lots of things relevant, not only to the diaspora experience in North America, but just to overcoming difficulty in life in general. So, Komba, thank you for joining us. If I missed anything about your introduction, feel free to jump in and correct or add to it.
No, thank you so much. I think you got everything. I appreciate you guys and thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I'm really glad that you made time to join us. We actually got to know Komba a little bit back at the beginning of the pandemic, and we're talking about ways that we might collaborate. And then, of course, the pandemic sort of sucked up a lot of attention for everybody, but we've been reconnecting with him recently, and we're really excited to get him on to talk about his story. So, Komba, thanks for joining us. Your book is a really powerful story of coming out of a difficult situation in Civil War era Sierra Leone, building a new life in North America, moving to a few different places in the course of doing that. And I just wanted to ask you to tell us a little bit about that journey, your childhood, the challenges you faced before you left Sierra Leone, sort of ultimately triggered your departure, and then some of that journey that you went through before landing in Yukon.
Thank you so much. When I came to Canada, I decided to write this book on resilience from Civil War to the Canadian Dream. The goal of the book actually is to motivate and to inspire readers never to give up. I was born in a small town in Sierra Leone that actually starts with the book. Chapter 1 is called Gandon. Gandon is my town where I was born, raised up in Gandon. And I spent most of my time in Gandon and moved to Kwedu, Freetown. But when we had a civil war way back in, I think it was around 1990, 1991, when we had a civil war. As a teenager, it was a very difficult moment for me. Growing up as a teenager, experiencing civil war, it was very, very difficult. I lost my dad during that time. And yeah, my dad was my best friend. My dad was my closest friend. We were very close. And when I lost my dad, it was very difficult for me. I became displaced. I became a refugee in neighboring country, Guinea. But in the midst of all what I went through, what kept me alive was the power of resilience. Never to give up on myself, because I knew that there was something inside me that I could give back. And I didn't want to just give up because of the Civil War. I talk about 6 principles of my book. I talk about hope. I talk about faith. And those 2 things actually put me together for me to be able to stabilize and be able to achieve or build today where I am. So never give up on yourself. I have hope in myself. I believe in myself. I have faith in God. I'm a Christian. I trust in God. In whatever thing I do, I trust in God, and God has been with me, guiding me, and showing me the path. So, in the midst of all what I went through, I told myself I will never give up. And when I moved to Canada, I decided to write this book so that I can inspire other people never to give up, no matter the situation.
Well, that's a powerful endorsement of really latching onto that kind of spirit of resilience and finding a way forward. Were there specific experiences or mentors that sort of helped you frame your engagement with challenges in that way, or did you personally kind of have to work your way through a process? You're talking about challenges that for many people can be just absolutely crushing and hard to move past. How do you kind of navigate that experience and get your mindset past just surviving and into a mode of being able to thrive in a new place with a new community?
Thank you so much, and Robert, for that question. Like I said, my number one mentor is God. This is something I consider very highly my number one mentor. When I have difficult situations, I always go back in prayers and ask God for direction. But my pastor, my senior pastor, Pastor Patrick Williams, the local community church I used to attend in Sierra Leone, even when I moved to Canada, I was in touch with him, and he will pray with me, he will guide me through. So one thing about me, I'm an extrovert. I like to interact with people. Anywhere I go, I try to find local communities, local churches, and try to integrate myself, and to see how I can able to find support, and also able to provide support. So church has been very huge part of me. I remember when I was in Edmonton, I attended this local community church, and actually I made some few friends. My first job actually in Canada, I got it through one of my friends from church. So there were a lot of people. There were a lot of people around supporting me, and I was able to really leverage on that, and at the same time trust in God and be able to navigate whatever I was going through and be successful.
So, so Komba, you clearly have overcome adversity and relocated to the United States, moved to Canada, created a new life. Tell me a little bit more about how you would define success, in the Canadian sense, but also after reading your book and hearing a little bit more about your story, you obviously grew up in a situation with your father who was successful at one period of time, and then you lost everything, and then you moved here. It was not easy at first, and then you had to relocate to Canada again. Tell us a little bit more around how you define success and how your family members throughout this entire process have played into that journey and ultimately your resilience.
John, that's a very brilliant question. Many times people define success in different ways. And for me, like you said, you read my book. My dad was a very successful man. He was a chief. I grew up when I was born. Actually, my dad had a lot of money. But in the course of all of that during the Civil War, we lost everything. So life taught me that all what we have just in seconds, we can lose everything. But the only thing that remains, the only thing that can help us as human beings is our character, our perseverance, our hope, our patience. Money can go, but our character will remain. So when people define success, for me, success is not just about money. Success for me is about the number of lives I am able to impact whilst I am alive. Success for me is when I see immigrant communities in Canada. I'm able to support them to transition, to be able to live a productive life. Success for me is when I see other people that are going through struggles, challenging time, and I'm able to share my story with them, to inspire them, to motivate them, to give back to community. For me, that's success. Money will always come. I always tell people, money will always come. But when you are alive, what is the impact? What is your legacy? What is the impact you are creating? It is not all just about money. Yes, of course, people consider money to be very successful. But I was in that situation wherein I saw my dad having a lot of money, and all of the money disappeared. just within seconds.
Mm.
So it taught me that success is not just about money. Success, in a very simple definition, it is about the lives you are able to impact in this world. That's how I define success.
Well, that's a big part of how we think about success too, and in the work that we do. As you know, it's not easy to do business on the continent. It's not easy to do
Yeah.
business in post-conflict settings, but at the end of the day, when you can have an impact on people's lives and make it possible for them to achieve something that was out of reach before, it's a pretty good feeling. It's interesting to me that on the one hand, as you say, and I agree 100% with this. Money is not the metric by which any of us should define our success in life, and the person who wins at the end of the day with the most money in the bank account is not the winner in life when you think about life as an exercise in kind of interacting and making a difference in other people's experience. And yet, much of the work that you have done, whether it's at Great Way or at TD Bank, has been focused on helping people get a better handle on how to manage money, how to operate in a system, and which it matters what you can demonstrate about how you can manage your money. And I'm just curious what you've learned about the differences in how the financial system works in, say, the US or Canada versus the way it might work in Sierra Leone or Guinea or much of West Africa, and where have you found opportunities, particularly with your colleagues, your fellow diasporans, where have you found opportunities to kind of help people close that gap between whatever experience they bring to operating in this environment in North America versus what they need to learn in order to operate effectively and not necessarily win the money game, but at least not lose the money game.
That's a very brilliant question, and I'll walk through this based on my experience in mortgages in the finance industry. And the good thing is, when I was in Africa, I worked for KPMG, so we audited a lot of financial institutions back
Mm.
in Africa. And I can tell you definitely the financial system, Africa, especially, I'll focus on Sierra Leone because I know more about Sierra Leone than any other place. That's where I'm coming from. The financial system in Sierra Leone is quite different from North America, especially in Canada. And let's walk through. I'll give you guys a typical example in mortgages. In Sierra Leone, the idea of mortgages, I would say it is not really that much. People don't really know about mortgages that much in Sierra Leone. When you talk about building your credit, starting having a credit card, building a credit history, paying on time. These kinds of concepts in Sierra Leone is not really that much because the financial system evolved around all of those stuff. In Canada, when I started working at TD Bank, people apply for mortgages. We have to check their credit score. We have to check their income. And when we look at their credit score, we look at several factors. We look at they have what they call the debt service, the TDS, the GDS, all of those ratios. And all of those ratios have to tie with their liabilities, their assets, all of these things. In Canada, to determine all of those stuff, it's not just about looking at the credit score. We also look at other aspects to be able to determine whether somebody qualify for a mortgage or for a credit card or for a line of credit or things like that. In Sierra Leone, it is quite different. Like, if you tell somebody, if people are buying or building houses in Sierra Leone, what they do, they save money and probably they just build. They don't go to bank to loan money to. I think I went to Sierra Leone 2021. They have what they call the Housing and Mortgage Corporation in Sierra Leone, but it is quite different. So the encouragement to diasporans, how do we try to close that gap? Most time diasporans want to, probably they don't have the money. We know for sure in North America, nobody actually has enough money sitting in the bank account. But what we do have and what we can do is to build our credit history. When you have a very good credit history in this country, you can go to the bank and you can afford a car. You can go to the bank and you can get a mortgage. How can we able to get systems like this to start working and operating in countries like Sierra Leone. People from the diaspora want to go back. Probably they don't have the money right now up front to give like 15, 20, $30,000 to even build a house. But how can we develop a system? Maybe Jobomax could be that platform to be able to build that platform. So, hey, diasporans, we want you to go back to Sierra Leone to invest. But we know for sure you do not have the money, maybe the necessary money. But we have a platform. If your credit history is good, if your credit score is good, if we check all of the ratios, everything are in line, we could be able to help you to actually own your own property in Sierra Leone. How do we close those gaps? So I'll tell you in summary, the financial system in Africa and in North America is completely different. But I think
Mm.
there's always a beginning, there's always a step to something. And I believe the services that Jumbo Max is providing, we could be able to tap into that and provide services for people, and that will actually enable them to go back Africa, especially in Sierra Leone, to build their own houses. So that would be my summary to that question. It's
Mm.
completely different. Up to now, it's evolving. Maybe we'll
Yeah.
be able to work on it more.
I do want to go back just for 1 second. One of the interesting things that I feel like oftentimes very successful people talk about is environment. And I know you touched
Okay.
on your involvement with the church a little bit, but what really resonated with me in your book was this concept of being surrounded by good people, the importance of distinguishing who's really going to help you get on the right path and proceed in the right direction versus people who may distract you on that mission. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your perspective on environment, why the church has played and your faith has played such an important part of your success over the last 12 to 15 years since you've been in North America.
And that's a very good question, because I talk one of the principles in my book I talk about is a principle of positivity, positive mindset. And it's not just about your mindset, but it's also about the people you surround yourself with. If you surround yourself with around people that are very negative, that do not believe in your dream, they don't believe in themselves, they can take you down. So for me, my entire life has been, I identify people that I don't like weak, I don't like poor energy. When I see you demonstrating very poor energy, you are not optimistic about life, you're always crying. Of course, there's room to cry, there's room to complain, but I believe there's always room for opportunity to grow, to strive, and to come out very strong. So you can't continue dwelling on your past and crying all the time without taking any steps. So environment for me is key. Like now, I'm currently in the Yukon. What I do, I identify a local church there also. But even within the church, I try to identify people that share similar mindset with me. I will give you guys a very good instance. I remember when I came to Canada, I wanted to go to university. And I told one of my best friends that I wanted to go back to university. And they told me, Komba, what is wrong with you? And even when I was applying for jobs at TD Bank, friends were telling me, Komba, you think anybody is going to give you a job at TD Bank? You're just coming from Sierra Leone. Those kind of energy, I stay away from them. And I want
Mm.
to meet somebody that will tell me, Komba, I want to go back to Sierra Leone. I'm working with Jobomax. I want to build an estate. I want to make sure I have like 50 bedroom for students. But imagine I'm talking to somebody and telling me, Komba, you cannot achieve that. I
Mm.
have to stay away from them. So positivity in my book, I talk about one, having a positive mindset, but also having a positive environment with positive people that can actually inspire you to achieve your dream. That anybody that has to cry me down, I'll stay away from them. So that would be my way I surround myself, John, around my environment and positive people.
The one thing that I also think is important to share from your story is the challenges that you overcame in the United States, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it was clearly not an easy experience, and you really talk about expectations and how if you don't have the right expectations around what you will encounter, and if you don't do that proper research, beforehand, you can oftentimes be disappointed. But could you maybe speak a little bit more to your expectations when you came here, and what advice you'd give to other individuals that are considering, hey, I'm in Africa. I've heard of interesting success stories like Komba. What would you tell to someone like that around how to level set their expectations for their journey?
Great. That's actually one of the chapters in my book. I call it making the move and managing expectations because it is very key. I will tell you, before coming to North America, I had little idea how things really were, how things are in North America. I didn't have nobody to actually tell me what I should expect. I remember I had a friend in London. His name is Dalton. When I told him I wanted to relocate to Canada, to US actually, he told me, Komba, just be ready. But he didn't give me the detail. So he just told me, Komba, just be ready. Things could be very difficult. So when I came to US, of course, you read my book wherein I was staying in an apartment during the winter for a whole week without heat, without light. Because the expectations of people living in Africa is that we set it so high. We are thinking the moment you come to North America, like monies just come from the trees. That's been the expectation. Like people live in Africa, they think North America, everything is just easy. But I learned the hard way and I was able to navigate. So first of all, what I tried to do was to understand how the system works, understand the financial system. I went back to school with the idea so I can able to better understand how the Canadian culture, what I must do to succeed. So those, even though I had a very high expectation. So at some point in time, when you have a very high expectations, there is always tendency if things do not go your way or the way you expected, you could be frustrated. You could be like, okay, things are not going my way and I'm frustrated. So I deliberately wrote in my book to encourage immigrants. If you're coming to Canada, if you're coming to US, if you're going to Europe, please make sure you do your research. Try to understand exactly what is on the ground. Try to understand the culture. Try to find a way how you can able to adapt. Another thing I talk about in my book is what I call pivoting. If things are not working with for you, like when I was in US, things were extremely difficult for me in Kansas City, Missouri. What I did, I pivoted. I changed course of action and I relocated to Canada. I always tell people this. I can never, I can never put myself into a risk I cannot manage. I always want to expose myself to risks I can manage. If I cannot manage it, I will not expose myself to it. So that is how I manage my expectations. I try to learn because when I came, it was a shock for me. This is a great country on earth, US. And I was there right in that apartment. I could not afford to pay my bills. I could not afford to pay electricity. I could not afford to even buy food. And I was living in one of the greatest countries on earth. And I was struggling. And I was in an apartment for a week without light, without heat during winter. But yes, through the power of resilience, through the power of not giving up, I was able to navigate through all of those challenges. And today, I can tell both of you guys that I've been able to find a space in this society that I call my home.
Well, that is good to hear. You touched on something that I kind of want to follow up on a little bit.
Okay.
When you come from outside of North America, come to the US, come to Canada as a diasporan, as you point out, there's a gap between what you're expecting and what you find out on the ground, right? And you have to adjust your expectations to to be able to operate in the new environment. So in some ways, there are things you have to let go of. I mean, not only do you leave the place that's home physically, but also mentally and emotionally, there are some things you have to let go of in order to sort of make space for understanding what the new environment is where you are. And yet, I think most people in the diaspora don't want to let go of everything. they don't want to leave everything behind, right? They want there's that part of their identity that comes from where they were born and where their ancestors were. It remains an important part of their identity. And I'm curious to hear how over the course of your experience in the US and in Canada, how have you navigated that tension between knowing what part of your heritage from where you grew up remains really a core part of who you are and will always be there, and what have you had to let go of? What do you miss? What are some things that are part of that culture and experience in Sierra Leone that maybe life would be better over here if we could incorporate more of that stuff into how we operate.
One of the things I talk about in my book, one of the principles I talk about is what I call adaptability. How do you adapt to different circumstances, to different situations? And that's what I think most immigrants need to really learn. I will tell you when I come initially, I struggle with having real good African food. This is true story. Real
Yeah,
good,
yeah, sure.
real good, real. I mean, a real good like you've been to Sierra Leone, so you know the Sierra Leone food a little
Yeah,
bit, right? I was
yeah,
I
sure.
was I was asking you the other day, have you tried the cassava leaf, the potato leaves, the plantain? Those real African food. When I came,
Yeah.
I missed those food. So as an individual, when I moved to US, when I moved to Canada, some of the cultural things I have to adapt. There are still some part of like my common language, Creole language. Of course, I speak Creole every day. When I see a Sierra Leonean, I don't speak English to them. I
Mm.
try to speak Creole and Creole and my look. If we are from the same tribe now, Kono, I speak Kono with them. So those are things that are with me, that will always remain with me, that are part of my culture. But also, I need to also look at the Western culture, politeness, the Western culture. How do you approach things? I went to university and I learned a lot. And I was surprised about the things I learned at the university. Even when I communicate, this is something people don't know. When I came to Canada, in terms of communication, my communication was good, but there are certain things in the Western culture, if you say it, it will be rude. And people don't know this. But if you say it in the African culture, it's acceptable.
Mm.
But you only learn those things by learning the culture. You know, it's not like everything was bad, but these are just different cultures. Like saying, I wasn't used to saying please. Nah, I would just come to my mom saying, "Can you give me this food? This is my food, and I just want to eat and go." And probably get the stuff and just keep going. Maybe my mother will give me. I will not even say thank you. I'll just keep going. But these are like basic, even as small as they are, but these are basic cultural difference. These are basic things. They are things like we don't learn. Maybe you observe how things are done and try to adapt yourself. So in summary, when I talk about my book, the aspect of adaptability, it's not just one aspect. Adaptability in the environment. How do you adapt into the environment? How do you adapt in cultural setting, the cultural barriers, the language? Even sometimes when you speak, I can tell you I have degrees, but it took me time. And up to now, I still have accent. When I speak, most people will say, Komba, I don't understand what you're saying. I will need to rephrase
Mm.
and try to say it in a much more slower way so that they can understand. And the other thing I learned, even in terms of jokes, slangs, some of the jokes maybe they will make in this culture, I'll see it like it's not a joke for me. And these are things people just ignore. But those
Yeah,
little tiny tiny stuff, you learn them, you observe, and the key word here, you adapt. So
yeah.
you can able to integrate yourself properly within the society you find yourself.
Yeah, that all makes sense. We've certainly had to do a lot of adapting in Guinea, and then moving from Guinea to Sierra Leone because they're not the same. They're right next door,
Yes.
and there are certainly some similarities, but there's a lot of differences. And then you go to Ghana, and there's a lot of differences, and you go to Cameroon, and there's a lot of differences. So I certainly hear you on the adaptability. That's a critical skill. One just sort of follow up. You have had experience in different diaspora communities in the U.S., in Canada. Kansas City, Yukon, and other towns along the way. What do you see in diaspora communities in terms of how they are seeking to engage back home? Is it a you know, I imagine there are some people that leave for whatever reason. Some people are fleeing violence. Some people are looking for economic opportunity, and they get to a new place. And for some people, they may feel like, okay, this is my new home. Everything I do from now on is going to be here. There are other people who know they want to make a life in a new place, but they also know that they want to go back. They want to at some point return to where they came from and have whether that's for retirement or for a second career after they do this. What have you observed in different diaspora communities with respect to that, how they maintain that connection back home? What do you see people looking to do or trying to do in terms of maintaining that engagement with their home country?
Connecting back to Sierra Leone, this is something based on my experience and talking to diasporans is one of the biggest way. Most of the diasporans right now, their goal is to actually own a property back home. Try to
Most of
have
them,
their
you see.
most of them, I can
Really?
tell you, because that's it. People talk about investment in different ways. But when people talk about investment, people are not just talking about the return on investment. I will take an example right now. We talk about investment in a property, or we talk about investment in real estate, or we talk about investment probably in agriculture, or maybe investment in tourism. But now, owning a house is actually a foundation of anything we do, everything we do. If I want to go to Sierra Leone right now, it's either I rent a place to stay, or I will have to stay with my cousin or my brothers that already have a house.
Right.
So the pattern I've seen within the diaspora communities, first of all, they want to have their own house. They have to have the comfort, their own safety. Like, okay, I'm going to Sierra Leone, but I'm going directly to my own house, and I want to build it to the standard I want. It's not just about, okay, I want to own a property because I want to have the return on investment on the payback period. No, this is something I want to have. So my kids, it's about building a legacy. It's
Mm.
about building the security. So everything connected, everything we talk about from diasporas, going back to Sierra Leone or going back to Ghana or going back to Guinea, it has to start, because if you go to Sierra Leone, you don't have a house, you might be staying with somebody, or you may be staying with somebody. But if you have your own place where you can go do your business, and in the evening or at night you come, you have your own comfort zone, then you see things start falling in place. So owning a house for diaspora, this is something that is very common. And I can say 90 to 95%, based on my experience, they want to connect back to Africa. But the way they want to connect back to Africa is to get their own houses. And now they have their own houses, they can start talking about investing probably in tourism, investing in communication, investing in agriculture, because they also want to take their families. Like, you have kids, you have your wives, you want to take them back home, but you want to take them so they can stay in your own house, in your own
Mhm.
home, because home is not just investment. Home is your comfort, it's your safety, it's where your family is, your legacy. Whether you are around or not, people can actually go and stay there. So this is one of the way people are connecting back to Africa. But I can tell you for sure, I can tell you both, one of the biggest problem in getting these dreams come to reality is what I would call the trust
Mhm.
deficit. Trust deficit, even in our relatives. And I'm not talking about trust deficit in the government. I'm talking about trust deficit in relatives, in family members, because most diasporans have been either ripped off, they've been disappointed, and even though they want to embark on this journey, the trust deficit exists. They say, I don't believe in nobody, I don't trust nobody. I'm working very hard for my money here, I'm sending my money, and nobody's doing anything. I've list like my friend. I have a friend. She's been trying for quite some time to get a property, and she's struggling for years. And there's no way she sent money upon money upon money, and there's no structure. So that
Right.
trust deficit, how do we close that gap? So when you talk about connection to Africa, people really want to connect back to Africa. They want to connect back to Africa. Maybe work with the government to reform policies, work with the government for economic development, work with the government for investment. But it all starts by actually saying, you know what, this is the country I come from. If I want to go and be part of this country, if I want to go invest in this country, let me first start by owning my own house, wherein I can go with my kids at my comfort zone, relax, and now I can use my house as a springboard to be able to invest in other areas. So
Yeah.
that's how I see the diaspora, and 95% they really want to connect back to Africa,
Mm.
and this is one key way they want to connect. They want to see policies change. They want to see invest. They want to help people. They want to become entrepreneurs. But actually, having their own houses is a challenge for them,
Hmm.
and it's key. So Jobomax coming to close that gap, it will be a very good something I believe the diaspora and community can actually relate to. I
Mm.
always say this based on my experience in my entire life. People are not looking for anybody that will cause problem. People are always looking for either organizations, individuals, or community that can provide solutions to
Mm.
problem. And I believe Jobomax can be that solution provider to close that gap, to say, hey, we are here, we live in the diaspora, we understand your situation, we know your financial burden, but we are here to help. We are here to provide a solution so you can own your own house, not just for investment, but for your safety, for your
Hmm.
comfort, for your legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're certainly trying, and what you say resonates, Komba, because we've had customers that I'm thinking of one guy in particular who's in Germany, a retired doctor. After he bought his house with Jobomax,
Mhm.
he had before he bought his house, he had started an NGO to focus on sanitation and water issues in Guinea. But it was after he bought his house that he really was able to dedicate more time and invest more and really get that entity off the ground and running. I'm thinking of another woman who, after she bought her house, invested to set up a shop and start bringing goods over from outside Guinea to sell in Guinea. So it's definitely something that if people can successfully make that investment and get that security of knowing that they've got a place where they're safe that belongs to them, then it opens the door to all kinds of other investment. And that's, as you say, something that governments in the region would really do well to pay attention to, and would do well to put in place policies that encourage that kind of investment, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's where also the diaspora comes in, right? The
Yeah.
diaspora should be able to connect with their home countries to be able to get these policies change, policies that are favorable for investment, policies that are favorable for diasporans to be able to go back home, to invest, to own properties, to own lands. Because sometimes the bureaucracies in those countries sometimes could be very frustrating. And living like in Canada, you'll be surprised to know this. After you've been here for 10, 15 years, you go back to your own country and you're completely lost. You don't even know how things work. This is something I experienced. You're
Yeah.
completely lost. So these are ways I think the diasporans have been like. I'll call upon the diasporans to connect back to our own country, to lobby, to work with the government, to see how we can able to create and establish friendly policies that actually support diasporans to go back to invest, to become entrepreneurs, to own properties. That would be something that I look forward to, and I would love to be part of those kinds of venture going back to Africa.
Yeah, no, that's it's very interesting, and as Bob mentioned, we hear these types of stories all the time. You talk about legacy and how you can inspire your own kids, right, to foster a similar relationship with your home country in Sierra Leone, and owning a home could be the means of your kids starting to develop that relationship. I'm curious, obviously a lot has changed in Sierra Leone in the last 20 plus years. You mentioned it a little bit around it's changed a lot. You don't recognize a lot of Sierra Leone, but What are some of the major changes from your experience going back that you think are interesting for other individuals that are thinking about buying property or buying a home back in Sierra Leone?
When back in the day when I was there, young, very young people, very young, like in their 20s, 30s, they were not interested in buying properties. Probably they would just rent. But when I went back, I saw most of my friends actually they are trying to build houses, like one or two houses. And I'm super proud of what the government is doing. They are changing policy. It could be sometimes longer to change, but I think the enabling atmosphere to encourage diasporans to go to invest. But there are now policies, at least you go to Sierra Leone if you want to register a business. It is much more easier compared to before. They are moving, so most of the government and platforms are now moving digital online, where people can go online and access materials for education. And there's a whole ministry called information and civic education. They create civic awareness among the citizens. So I think a whole lot of changes is taking place. It could take some time for us to see everything come to like full-fledged operational, but I would say the government is on the right direction, and they are now just ready to make everything digital and help people able to navigate, get information. So these are things for us in the diaspora, because I just want to sit here in my living room. I do not want to call anybody. I want to access the internet and get the necessary information like I would do here in Canada. I want to do the same thing in Sierra Leone. I want to go to Sierra Leone, but I want to invest in housing. I want to invest in, let's say, in tourism. But I should be able to go online if everything is working, platform, internet, and government is investing in all of these things. I should be able to get access to those information. And before going to Sierra Leone, I already have at least some kind of information. So John, I can tell you things are changing. I see they are making effort. They have all of the ministries, department, and agencies supporting those kind of stuff. So, but I think they are on the right direction, making sure things are working properly.
That's good stuff. I want to back up a little bit because you were talking earlier in the conversation about some of the work you've done trying to help people in the diaspora understand this whole sort of credit ladder and building up your credit record and that kind of stuff. And then we've talked also about the absence of a mortgage market in much of West Africa and the gap between what people want to invest in and what sort of financing is available to make that happen. We're in the business of building homes and selling them mostly to people in the diaspora. We sell to local buyers as well, although we don't have partners for local currency financing the way we do for financing for people outside of the region. So that's definitely something we're still working on. But I'm curious, when we engage with the diaspora, we know that many people do want to have a home, as you say. According to you, most people do want this to be able to make this kind of investment back home. But we also know that it's not everybody wants to do that, and even those that want to, maybe now is not the time. Maybe they don't have the resources in place yet, or they don't have things stabilized in their own career to be able to do that yet. What can companies like ours do as we engage with the diaspora to be helpful? We are a for-profit business, but we are also a mission-driven business. We're in this business because we care about this part of the world and we care about the people that we serve, and we want to be helpful even if people are not ready to buy a house with us right away. What are some things that we can do? Should we be thinking about being a conduit for financial literacy education? Should we be thinking about giving people as much information as possible about what the home building process is like, so that even if they're not going to buy with us, they have sort of a checklist and understand everything that's involved in that process, so that they can avoid trouble? What just looking to brainstorm some ideas about what opportunities there are for us to have some sort of impact in that community in the diaspora, even when somebody's not ready to buy a house from us right away.
With regards to Jobomax, I think you'll be very, very surprised to know that most of those people that told you they don't want to invest in Africa or in Sierra Leone, you'll be surprised to know probably they've been frustrated. They've tried before, they've been frustrated. And so these are my recommendations I will make. Number one, ask them how long you've been in whether in UK or how long you've been in Canada, how long they tell you. You have families, because those are key factors people always look at when they start having families, start thinking about having a property. Have you ever considered, or have you ever tried to get a house in your home country? Let them say yes or no, we want to get a percentage of that. We check those percentage and realize, okay, if you say yes, did you complete your house? Most of them will say no. Most of them will say no. The reason will be no because of they've been frustrated.
Yeah.
They started, they had in mind, they have, okay, all of this idea, we want to own a house in Africa. And they started the process. And along the line, either a family member, either your uncle or your aunt or some friend frustrated them. And they decided, I'm not moving forward. If we are able to do a research in the diaspora community and get those statistics, that can able to help us to actually work. Number two is to create more awareness. Probably right now, like I always tell people, you can have a very good product, you can have a very good service, but if people don't know about it, nobody's buying it.
Right.
So how do we create awareness? It is awareness and sensitization. Because like I told you guys that there's a trust deficit. That gap is already there. And because of that, when people start talking about, oh, I want to build house in Sierra Leone, I want to build house in Guinea, I want to build house in Ghana. Some people just gave up that I'm not interested. But Jobomax is coming in to solve this problem. But we need to do more awareness. There has to be more awareness within communities. It could be on an individual basis, it could be on a group basis, but there has to be more awareness that actually there's now somebody that is within this community, that is within this region, that understand your financial situation, that understand your problems, and is here to provide a solution. So those are the kind of things we need to start embarking on, to actually
Yeah.
create the awareness, do a research to know exactly what up, why people are not really, like I said, everybody wants to own their house. People want to go on vacation. Like if you check right now, how many people want to go on vacation December? Most people don't really have a house. They want to go on, they'll be staying with cousins, they'll be staying with their aunts, they'll be staying with their friends. But if they realize now there's a platform, there's an organization that is able, they can pass through this organization. They can have information. The other thing we need to do, the Jobomax needs to do, is to get enough information about the housing market in Sierra Leone. The housing market in Sierra Leone, I learned owning a land. I've seen a lot of situations in Sierra Leone wherein somebody will tell you, I have a land, a piece of land. Probably it could be a town in Sierra Leone. They call it a piece of land, maybe a town of lot or two towns. And through 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the line, or they want to now actually start building on that land, and somebody will just come from nowhere and say, this is my property.
Right.
And they will start dragging the whole thing into court. And before you know, because of your sitting here, you don't want to involve yourself in enough fighting, you just give up. So what do we do to be able to address issues like that? When
Right.
somebody comes to Jobomax, say, you know what, I have a piece of property, I want to build a house. What is a due diligence? What is a due diligence? Is this property yours? Are the document, are the paperwork,
Right.
is everything complete? What do we do? Because we don't want to start building on this property to just 2 months down the line, somebody just popped up from nowhere and said, this is my land. What is
Yeah.
happening? We have what to call reputational. I always talk about the reputational risk, not just for individual, but also for organization. Because of Jobomax will be involved in the whole process, the way people will interpret it, oh, it was Jobomax. They don't even know the story behind it. So these are factors we need to look at when it comes to dealing. If I'm in North America, if I tell you this is my land, I'm telling you this is my land because every
Right.
paperwork has been done.
Right.
But if somebody
Not
tells you
not
in
just not
Africa,
not just that, but they also have title insurance, right? So
yeah,
even if you're
yes, yes. But if somebody tells me right now, I'm a Sierra Leonean, a Canadian, if somebody calls me right now and tells me, Komba, I have a land for you to buy, the first question is that land free and clear? because there could be a
Right.
lot of thing going on.
We think about this a lot. I mean, we have we're about to buy a new piece of land in Cameroon. We bought a
Mhm.
new piece of land in Guinea last year, and we have bought several properties over the years since we've been doing this. And every time we learn something new, and at this point, I think our checklist is over 60 items long, where we are make like at every step of the process, you've got to really check because there is no
Yes,
title insurance. You effectively have to self insure. And if you're trying to do that from a distance and you don't have that perspective, you don't have that experience in the market, it is really easy to get tripped up.
it is.
Oh,
So that is the reason why most diasporans get discouraged. So to come back to your question in summary, one, there has to be extensive research in the diaspora community to actually know why they discourage, have they ever started or think about having a house, or they started, they stop, why they stop. These are things we need to investigate. Then number two, I will advise to actually do massive awareness. It could be
mm,
through social media platform, it could be through individual mouth to mouth, it could be face to face, it could be podcasts like this, talk about and
right.
share within the Sierra Leone African community, so people can know exactly about Jobomax and what they provide. So that would be my advice for the diasporans.
So Komba, to that point, as Bob mentioned, you've been a part of a lot of different diasporan communities in the U.S. and in Canada, and I think you spent a little bit of time in the UK as well. What what do you deem as the most reliable source of that type of information? Is it community leaders? Is it some of the online presence of these companies? In your mind, you've obviously done a lot of research in both directions right now. What would you say are the best means of accumulating that knowledge for individuals that are considering doing a similar investment back home?
I will tell you, in all of the communities we have community leaders. Like, so one of the key area to reach out these people, they have community forums. Like, I am part of a forum where we are 140 something Sierra Leoneans. So now going through those, so we need to identify all of the leaders. You go to the Cameroon, if you go to the Cameroon community, they have the Cameroon organization. For example, they have a Liberian organization here in Edmonton. They have the Ghanaian organization. They have the Sierra Leone organization. So the first task will be to identify the lead of all of these organizations, because each of these organizations, they have what we call a WhatsApp organizational group that have over 200, 300, 400 people in those groups. So if we are able to access the leaders of those, first of all, we access them, number one. Number two is for them to be able to buy the vision, for them to see the services, for them to see the value that Jobomax is providing. Now, once they see the value, when they go to their even just not just posting it in the forum, but when they call their community meetings, they can actually discuss this. That, hey, we now have a solution, and we can make small flyers like handbills, and actually post into those, like, about Jumbo Max, about the key services we provide, and just send it to those various forums through the community leaders, and maybe work directly with the community leaders to say, this is what we want to offer. We know there's a problem. We know there's a trust deficit, but we want to reach out to you, so we can able to reach out to your people to see how we can able to help them get their own properties back in Africa. That's one key way.
Well, we will certainly keep trying that. I think, you and I have talked about this initiative that we started this year to try to build out a network of diaspora community liaisons who can help us make those kinds of connections into the community. So we're hopeful that we can do more of that. Because I will tell you, as somebody who's been in this business for over 10 years now, it's a great feeling when we talk to somebody and we tell them
Okay.
what we're doing, we tell them what we're offering, and they say, "Oh my gosh, where have you been all my life? I have wanted to have this. If I had only known about you 2 years ago, 5 years ago, before I, wasted my money." So that's great. And we love hearing that. But the flip side of that is we hear from a lot of people, how is it that I've never heard of you? And that's the problem we have is is the people that haven't heard of us, and how to get that awareness. And it really, I think, to your point, it's a matter of really building those close connections with diaspora communities in different parts of the country and different parts of the world, because people, to your earlier point, there is a trust deficit. And while we know that we're trustworthy, while we know that we're going to do what we say we're going to do, we know we're going to build that house that people sign a contract for. If somebody's been through that exercise with somebody else 2 or 3 times and it's failed, it's really hard for them to have that trust, right? They need a
Yeah.
reason to trust. So
Well, Komba, I mean, I think you have a very inspiring story, and I don't know if Bob has mentioned this, but one of our co-founders comes from a very similar experience. He grew up in Cameroon, moved to the United States, and has always had the desire to go back and impact his communities. And I know for many in the diaspora, they look up to you as a role model, and I think this is a great opportunity for people to hear your story and read your book. So, I think for those individuals that want to learn a little bit more about you and your background and history, can you maybe share a little bit about where they can find your book and where they can purchase that? And we'll incorporate that into the show notes so people can go ahead and buy that. But where should they go to reach out and engage with you as well as hear your story?
So the book is on Amazon. Right now we have the e version and the hard copy. I also have a website. I also have a personal website, resiliencestorybook.com. But I think I prefer more website for people like in Canada. They want to get it. If they want me to sign the book, they can actually get it from because if you get it from Amazon, there's no way I'm going to sign it for you. But if you really
right.
want a signed copy if you want a signed copy from me, you can order it from my website, resiliencestorybook.com. They have various channels. I have YouTube, TikTok. I have a Facebook page. I just talk about my story, and I've been to a couple of places wherein they've interviewed me. I'll just put those stuff on my channel. But basically Amazon and my website. That's where to
Sounds
find
good.
it.
Well, when we share out this podcast on our channels, we'll make sure to put a link to those so people can find you more easily. Well, this has been a fruitful conversation from my perspective. It's really interesting hearing your story and hearing your insight into how companies like ours can do a better job of engaging with the diaspora. John, are there other things we want to try to cover, or have we eaten up our allocated hour for podcast at this point?
I think I maybe give Komba a chance to just share any parting words with his fellow Sierra Leonean diaspora community, and maybe just some other key pieces of advice that maybe we missed in this discussion. But Komba, is there anything that you'd like to share in closing?
Yeah, I think I always tell when I do podcasts or I do speeches, I always talk to my audience that never give up on yourself. Always believe in yourself. Trust in yourself. I always say this: people can believe in you, but the question is, do you believe in yourself? Do you believe in your vision? Do you think you have something? Our life, we are not defined by the current circumstances we are, but we are defined by the power of our resilience. We have the power within us to rise. And I'm talking to the audience. You have the power within you to rise, to adapt, and to come out stronger, no matter the situation. My life is a testament. I was a refugee. I was displaced. But today, through the power of resilience, I want to reach out to all immigrants, never to give up on themselves. Those that are going through difficult time, it is just a moment of time. It will come to an end. There are a lot of opportunities. Instead of focusing on the problems, focus on the opportunities. Grab them, run with them, and just be successful. So that's my message to the immigrant community and to everyone listening to this podcast. Join us Jobomax is amazing. I know for sure what they are offering to the people, to the immigrant community, to the diasporas. I believe they can able to close the trust deficit that has existed for quite some time. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for listening to this podcast. That's my message to everyone. And back to you, John.
Great. Well, again, we certainly appreciate your time, Komba, and we look forward to continuing the discussion. So thank you, everyone else, for joining, and stay tuned for our next episode. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody.